was extraordinary. Introduction. This book tells the story of the final battle of the Second World War in Europe. That battle began on the 6th of April 1945 on the small Dutch island of Texel. It did not end until the arrival of Canadian troops on the 20th of May, which was more than 2 weeks after the surrender of the German forces in the Netherlands. The soldiers on both sides of the battle wore the same uniforms. On the one side were Georgians, who had for the most part been Soviet soldiers who were captured in battle. Then, when taken to German prisoner of war camps, they had been offered the opportunity to sign up to the German side. Those Georgian soldiers on Texel were part of the 822nd Eastern Battalion of the Wehrmacht. Fighting against them on Texel were German soldiers who, until the early morning hours of the 6th of April, believed their Georgian colleagues to be loyal comrades. And caught between them were the Dutch, who initially believed that their island had been liberated by the Allies, but later found themselves stuck in the middle of a bloody battle in which dozens of civilians, including children, lost their lives. It is an extraordinary tale, not least for the fact that the German surrender on the 5th of May did nothing to end the fighting on the island. While the story of the Georgian uprising on Texel is little known to most people, it is not an unknown battle. In both Georgia and the Netherlands, books have been published and documentary films released. There was even a full-length Soviet feature film made about it. More about that later. But it remains largely an unknown story outside those two countries. And, as we shall also hear, the history that is known is not all true, and the creation of the myth of Texel over the course of several decades is itself an important part of this story. This book begins, as it must, in Georgia. That country has a history spanning thousands of years, but I want to write about the period beginning roughly around the First World War. That was a time when Georgians, Russians, and Germans interacted, providing a basis for the later friendship between some Georgians and Germans, and for a more complex relationship with Russia. The Germans and Georgians during the Second World War were inspired in part by things they did in the First, including the formation of a Georgian legion as part of the German army. The 822nd Battalion was a part of that Georgian legion. And of course, some people lived long enough to participate in both world wars. It's also important to go back a few years in the history of the Netherlands, as it turned out that the Georgian rebels on Texel had been talking to, and were influenced by, leading figures in the Dutch Communist Party. The involvement of the Dutch Communists in the decision of the Georgians to rebel, and to rebel when they did, has been the subject of some controversy. Their history, and in particular the period of the Hitler-Stalin Pact, 1939 to 1941, deserves our attention, as it may explain why some of the Dutch communists were so enthusiastic about the Georgian rebels on Texel, both during and after the war. The German invasion of the Soviet Union on the 22nd of June 1941 set the stage for the story I will tell in this book. It is therefore necessary to look into the fate of the millions of Soviet soldiers, Georgians and others, who fell into German captivity. How some of them were persuaded to join the German army is discussed. In the course of my research, I came upon the intriguing story of Sonderverband Bergmann, an elite German force full of Georgians and other Caucasians, which was a forerunner of the Georgian Legion. The Germans, and in particular Hitler himself, never fully trusted the former Soviet soldiers who in captivity agreed to join the German side. Their suspicions proved to be well-founded, for at a later point in the war, when it was clear that the Germans were going to lose, there were several incidents of Georgians and other Osttruppen